Now in Florida, as a Floridian, what is your share of the state of Florida's debt? And it's about $600 per Floridian, and actually declining every day, not just because we're paying it off, because as we have more net in-migration, then that takes the share down. Now, not that you'd ever have to pony up the $600, but it's like, this is something that's manageable and sustainable over the long term going forward. Our budget, to put in perspective how we do things, and Commissioner Simpson can talk about some of the things that we did when he was in the Senate, some of the things we're going to do this year in terms of investing in things that matter, whether it's education, environmental stewardship, transportation, and infrastructure. We've done some really, really big things. Yet with all that being said, we've been paying down debt, running surpluses, cutting taxes. And right now, the closest state to us population-wise is New York. But we actually have millions of more people than New York does. We may even have some people here who used to be citizens of New York who moved here. That's not uncommon to see in this state. And yet, even though we have millions of more people than New York State, our budget is half the size of their budget. But when people come here from there, what do they tell me? Oh my gosh, your roads are nicer, your services are better, your education system's better. So we're able to actually do the things that matter, but we're doing it with half the footprint. And not only half the budget, if you look at the total number of state government workers, we have the lowest amount of state workers per capita in the entire United States. So talk about a small, manageable government. So it just shows you, if we're able to do these things with that footprint, how much money do these governments waste of taxpayers every single year, from Washington, D.C. to all these other state capitals? And nobody likes paying taxes, but when you're paying taxes for things that they're just going to fritter it away, you can see why people flee these jurisdictions and come to Florida. So we're proud of what we've been able to do with that, working with the legislature, and that's good for each legislative session because you're able to do things and it's manageable. But I think even more important than that, look ahead 10, 15, 20, 25 years. I think we're built to do very, very well over this period of time, as long as we continue sound leadership. And you look at the rankings. I mean, we were ranked #1 economy by CNBC. We were ranked #1 in new business formations. I think every year for like the last 5 years, the state of Florida is ranked #1 in that. #1, of course, in net in-migration in the Tampa Bay area. You guys see that every day of people that are moving. And look, as governor, I am not asking people to move to Florida. Like, there's some governors, they'll beg people to go to their states. I'm not even asking businesses to move. A lot of times the businesses will call us and ask, how can we get to Florida, because they're being treated poorly in so many of these other jurisdictions. So we're not out doing that because, look, I think there's been benefits, but there's also challenges and some of the things that you have to do. But nevertheless, we're #1 in net in migration yet again. And that is a very important data point, because ultimately people vote with their feet. And if they're willing to pick up their entire life and move halfway across the country, or even all across the country to come to Florida, that's a statement, and that says something. Commissioner Simpson mentioned we are ranked #1 in education by U.S. News and World Report, and part of that is because of what we've been able to do with supporting parental choice in education for K-12, some of the focus on early literacy, which is important, but also our higher education is the most affordable in the entire United States. You can go as an in-state tuition to our universities, and you're paying the same tuition that you paid 10 years ago at the universities. I mean, so in a high inflation environment, which we've experienced, and then with higher ed inflation has been raging for decades, the state of Florida, it's like turn back the clock day. You're paying the exact same. So that's affordable for people, and I think that's one of the reasons why we've done well. And then also we're #1 for education freedom, #1 for parental involvement in education, and those are really, really important, and we're proud of it. I can tell you this, though. When people come to Florida now, you ask them why, and yes, taxes, but we've always had lower taxes than these other states. Yes, there was certainly a major COVID wave in 2020, 21, 22, where they were fleeing some of these bizarre policies in these other states, no question about that. But if you talk to a lot of folks, one of the things they will say is they came to Florida because of our emphasis on public safety. You just don't see that in many parts of the country anymore like you should. You had some areas, some cities that used to be very, very orderly and have low crime like New York City. They reversed those policies that got them to that point, and now they've had trouble. You've seen attacks on law enforcement where they've tried to cut budgets across the force. We've really just done the opposite here in Florida. I mean, our view is simple. If you commit crimes, you're going to be held accountable. We're not just going to put you back on the street and let you commit more crimes. We're going to stand by the people that wear the uniform because we know it's important work, and we want them to be able to do their job knowing they have the backing of their communities. And part of the reason that I think we're in where we are is because we have embraced proper policies. We've had a lot of people that have worked very hard at our sheriff's departments with Chad and his deputies, all the other 65 of the counties, and soon to be Miami-Dade when they're going to get their sheriff. Police departments, our state agencies have all worked really, really hard, but we've put our money where our mouth is on this. When we started to see the defunding of police departments across the country a few years ago, we responded working with the legislature to say, okay, we're not going to do that, but we're going to do even better. We're going to pass legislation to ensure that no local government is allowed to get away with doing that in the state of Florida. And so we protected that to where we'd be able to go refund if necessary. And then we did 3 years in a row, we did $1,000 bonuses for every single sworn law enforcement officer, firefighter, and EMT in the entire state of Florida. And that's meaningful because that's a lot of people. We had to make sure that we were, dedicating a pretty decent chunk of money for that. But I tell when people see me about that, yeah, they like it. And we structured it so that you got $1,000 in your pocket after taxes. So the check was for like $1,300 or something like that. And that's meaningful, especially when prices have gone up over the last few years. But ultimately, no one's going to be retiring on a $1,000 bonus. I think more importantly than the economic impact was just the fact that if someone's getting this letter in the mail from the state of Florida with this check, that's showing that the state of Florida has your back. That's saying that the state of Florida, believes in what you're doing, and you have support in your community. We added to that by doing a $5,000 officer recruitment bonus program. So part of that is for people here, young people in Florida. If they choose to go into law enforcement, they're eligible for a $5,000 signing bonus right off the top. When we're recruiting officers from places like New York and Chicago and California, and we've done a lot over the last few years, they come in knowing they get a $5,000 bonus, right off the top. I know Chad has used that bonus to recruit people. I can just tell you this. Since we've done this program and really worked on recruiting police officers into the state of Florida, every single one I've talked to is glad that they made the move. And I have not met one person that has regretted coming to the state of Florida. And so I think that says something about the type of folks that we have. So we're going to continue to support those recruitment policies. Also going to make sure that we don't let Florida fall into some of the traps that you've seen some of these other states and cities fall into. Some of these areas like San Francisco, they have to close the stores because there's so much crime. We're going to be working with the legislature to actually go in the opposite direction and make sure that we're holding people engaged in retail theft accountable so that we don't let that happen in the state of Florida. Also, the same thing with what you see in some of these cities where you've had just massive homeless take over public streets and areas where it's really impinged on the quality of life. That is not appropriate. We need to have open and clean streets, and that should be the norm in every community in this state. And we're going to make sure that happens when we're doing with the upcoming legislative session. But public safety, understanding the need so that people can do their jobs, send their kids to school without having to worry about all the madness that we see all around the rest of the country. Also, just would like to point out, Florida is a huge agriculture state. And I think some people know like the citrus and whatnot, but when you travel out of state, like people just think of Florida as like South Beach, right? And I try to tell them, I'm like, we're one of the biggest cattle states in the country, and that doesn't compute. All the different things that we do in this state sometimes goes underreported, but we realize what an important industry it is. One of the threats, I think, that we're looking at, and we've taken action in Florida, is you have this whole movement called ESG now, environment, social governance. And what they're doing is they're basically taking businesses, major corporations, Wall Street banks, asset managers, a lot of money at stake here. And they're coming together and saying, well, we're only going to do business with people that abide by these ESG criteria. So that means kneecapping fossil fuels. It means kneecapping Second Amendment rights. There's a whole agenda at play here. And one of their targets is agriculture. They believe that agricultural practices are a big driver of global warming, and they want to be able to target that to basically change the way people are doing this. Now, that will not end well. That will create a farm crisis in this country. So in Florida, we've actually leaned in against the ESG. We said, we have a great state, a massive market. If we were our own country, we would be the 13th largest economy in the world. Come have at it. But, we're not going to let you impose an agenda on the backs of our residents that's going to be harmful to people's rights, to people's freedoms, and certainly to some of our key industries. And so folks in the agriculture industry here in Florida can know, as long as I'm governor, we're going to push back against this insanity because it will absolutely ruin agriculture in this country if we let it get out of hand. And I think we've had a lot of success. You've seen a lot of retreating on this from there. And look, part of this is these are bad policies that I don't think are in the best interest of the state or for the country for that matter. But I think there's a larger question. We're supposed to decide a lot of these issues of public policy through elections and through a constitutional system. Is it a substitute to just have 5 big banks and 5 big asset managers just come together and decide they have their imprint on society and they're just going to impose it without our consent? And what are we supposed to do? Just sit there and not do anything? No, in Florida, we're fighting back and we're winning this fight. So that's something we're going to continue to work hard on because we know how important it is. I think this is great that we're doing this yet again. I think it's been a great number of years. I remember us bouncing back from COVID, and there were areas where they were not allowed to have anything going on, and we had back to life and did very, very well. So I hope everybody takes time to enjoy the fair. I've got my grocery list of things I've got to bring back to Tallahassee tonight, and I know that when I bring that Barbie funnel cake home to my 3-year-old daughter and she eats it after dinner, that I am not going to get her in bed on time. Thank you all. God bless you. Appreciate it.
With the total shit show that is the politics of the other 49, for lack of a better term, it is so refreshing to see actual constitutional governance here in Florida that takes care of the people. All over the mainstream media, there's talk about this Supreme Court looking at this ballot, this and the other, and people just, we have one state that has both a primary and a caucus, and then one of the choices was, I don't think anybody is going to win. That's on the ballot. The thing, the baloney in Nevada. it's just so, it's cringe. It is. It's absolutely cringe to watch. The other 49 try to divine some leader that's going to go fix all of their problems. You see, that's the difference between Florida and the rest of the country. We don't sit and hold our breath and fall on the floor and roll around and say, well, DC should have this for us and DC should have that for us and all of this other, and they need to fix this and we need to that, and it's horseshit. It's putting off what you need to do for yourself. And that's the message from Florida to the other 49. You need to figure out how to fix your problems for yourself like we did. See, it wasn't so very long ago that Florida was a swing state. Nobody wants to talk about this. And I've really wanted to do a video about it, but I'm sure it would get demonetized. You see, it wasn't Trump that made Florida deep red. Trump was here and living here and down in Mar-a-Lago the whole time when the two terms of Obama were Florida voted for Obama twice. But all of a sudden now, what's the change? What's the change? Governor DeSantis is the change. You see, I'm going to make the allegation, Trump loves to talk about, well, he wouldn't have won if he hadn't gotten my endorsement. I make the allegation that Ron DeSantis would have won by even more had he not gotten Trump's endorsement. More people wouldn't have come out to vote for Gillum, basically voting against whoever Trump endorsed. See, that's what Trump does, is he engenders hate. He engenders conflict. He's the author of confusion and conflict. And if you're looking at what's in the mainstream media right now, talking about Biden and talking about who's going to be on the ballot and how they're going to do this and who's going to what, and Ronna McDaniel is going to step down from the head of the RNC, the party. And I'll tell you what, watch North Carolina. Something very strange is happening in North Carolina. I've been watching this for a while. That was where Trump announced his support for the transgender community, by the way. Long time ago, people forgot about this. And now he wants everybody to forgive Bud Light and go start drinking Bud Light again. But a long time ago, he was on a national liberal, left-leaning news program when he came out and said, yeah, anybody should be able to walk in any bathroom they want to. Back when it was chic to say that. Back when it was cool to say that. But now, everything's all of a sudden very, very different. And a group of states' rights people, which is the oddest thing, Colorado decided they didn't want to have Trump on the ballot. I thought states had rights. If Colorado doesn't want to put Trump on the ballot, that's up to Colorado, is it not? That's why a lot of the lawsuits got shot down back in 2020s, because there's a whole bunch of people, conservatives on the right, who are very correct in their states' rights belief that the state has the right to make the state what the state is, and the federal government can go take a flying leap. Well, now all of a sudden, these people who are on their knees in front of Trump, worshiping, you can use the visual there. I'm not going to repeat it. All of a sudden now want the Supreme Court of the United States to intervene and take away Colorado's right to determine who they want to and don't want to vote for. Isn't that ironic? I'm telling you though, watch North Carolina. It wasn't just that issue. Now Trump wants this, I don't know if he's Secretary of State or head of the Republican Party in that state, Watley, is that his name? Trump has come out and he's endorsed somebody to take over for Ronna McDaniel. And here's the kicker, something a lot of people don't know about. Donald Trump's son, Eric, is married to a woman. I'm trying to remember her name. She's real skinny. She's basically a clone of of Kristi Noem. If you could, Kristi Noem up in North Dakota? Or South Dakota? South Dakota. South Dakota. If you can imagine a blonde Kristi Noem, that is Eric Trump's wife. I'm sure someone out there will look that up for me, what her name is. But she ran for office in North Carolina. I don't know, a senator or representative or what it was. She ran for a seat. There's something going on with Trump and North Carolina. So keep your eyes on that. I've seen all sorts of new maps coming out, showing this huge Trump sweep across the country in the next election. It's all a bunch of horseshit. But the reality is this, and Florida is the living, breathing proof of this, that regardless of whatever is going on in Washington, D.C., a state has the ability to govern itself constitutionally if its people decide that's going to be the case. Georgia could do it. Mississippi could do it. Missouri could do it. Any state, if you elect the right people and start from the bottom up, it doesn't matter who is in D.C. And we're proving it, and it's making a lot of Trump people mad. And that's the case right now. Because they want everyone to believe that the only way the country, giant air quote, gets fixed, the only way any fix happens is if Donald Trump himself is reinstalled up in Washington, D.C., and then the fix comes from the top down. It comes from Washington, D.C. down to the state, and they fix things. That's what all the Trumpansies out there want you to believe. Because if you believe anything else, then that takes away from their worship of Donald Trump. They don't want you to believe, as a state, that you can fix it for yourself. And that's why Donald Trump hates Ron DeSantis. Absolutely loathes Ron DeSantis. You see, there was something I said a long time ago, and I let it go, and I let it drop, and I shouldn't have. The mainstream media, the leftist media, and the Trump organization, and Nikki, they spent so much money trying to get Governor DeSantis out of the race that he didn't really have any choice but to leave the race. But what they were really afraid of was something that I had mentioned a long time ago, and it was Casey. And I'm really, really wondering right now if Governor DeSantis stepped away because of his wife and his kids. Basically saying, look, if I'm going to get this much pushback, if I'm going to have this much problem, I'm not moving my kids up to that hellhole. I'm not moving my kids and my family up to that hellhole that is Washington, D.C. Fine. If it's going to be this case, if we're going to get this much pushback from the Trumps, we're going to get this much pushback from all of the other Republicans, we're going to get this much pushback from the left, then screw it. We'll go back to Florida and we'll show the rest of the world how you can continue to do it. See, we didn't have a 2020 event like the rest of the country did. We had some problems, sure. But what happened in Florida in 2020, 2021, 2022 was nothing like what happened other places. That's why they fled here. That's why so many of them were caught here, all the leftists and the liberals, because of the hellacious nature of what they were imposing on their people. Up north, they couldn't handle themselves. That's why they came down here. And that's why they continue to stay. And this is the best part of the entire story. Capitalism confirmed. All of the naysayers, all of the negative, all of the crap that people like to talk about Florida, all comes from the effects of capitalism and free markets. When you have a place that is better than everywhere else, and a whole bunch of people want to go there, and the properties start to dry up, the available ones, and they can't build houses fast enough, guess what's going to happen? The price of everything is going to go up. When you have this huge amount of increased demand, There was a great index the governor talks about all the time, and he talked about it in his debate with Newsom, about the U-Haul index, about how they were paying people to take U-Hauls out of Florida and get them back to California. There were so many people leaving the West Coast coming to Florida that they ran out of U-Hauls, and there were not enough U-Hauls going west, that they completely ran out, and they had to start paying people to actually get in the U-Hauls that were dropped off here, the one-way U-Hauls, and get in there and drive the 2,000 miles back. They would get convoys of them. They would take 6 or 7 U-Hauls, and then they would follow it with a chase van so that those people could come back here, or they would get the discount air tickets and fly them back. By the millions. So last night I tried to shoot a video of it, and it didn't really come out well. About 1 o'clock in the morning, we had a SpaceX launch, and I've mentioned to people I live about an hour and 15 minutes north, hour and 20 minutes maybe from Cape Canaveral, where they launched the SpaceX. Guys, I'll tell you what, that I have lived long enough to see this is an amazing thing. Not that I've lived this long, but in the sense that I never would have imagined being able to go out in my backyard, even as a kid, and see something so absolutely incredible and breathtaking. To watch a SpaceX launch, it is really, really an incredible thing. I mean, people have said, how is Florida, hey there, big mouth Mr. Maquis, how is Florida going to support itself if it does secede? Well, it's real simple. We have a spaceport. And that's what they call it. It's a spaceport. We have a spaceport now. And we have more tourism in the state of Florida than New York and California combined. We bring in more individual tourists into this state every year than California and New York combined. That's how many people come to Florida to spend their money on the beaches, and like the governor was talking about over the last week, the hot springs and seeing the manatees. I'll tell you what, if you haven't gone kayaking in some of the parks like Loxahatchee and Itchnatucky and all these little places, you're missing out, because it is an amazing thing to see. And when you talk about St. Augustine, just north of me, about 30 minutes, an actual Spanish galleon, an operational Spanish galleon, has just docked there up in St. Augustine. And you can go buy tickets and you can go tour it. And it's an amazing thing to see, to tour that whole city and see a city that was settled back in the 1500s be, Rainbow Springs. Yeah, here comes all the names for sure. It is an amazing, amazing place to visit, St. Augustine. For those of you who are history buffs, those of you who are colonial era buffs, if you want to go someplace where you can actually physically see it with your own eyeballs and walk on cobblestone streets and see buildings that have been there for 300 years and visit graves that are even older, it's truly an amazing thing to see. A working operational, the Fountain of Youth, the Star Fort. You want to go stand on the walls of a Star Fort? And when you look at the map and why it was what it was, and it's an amazing, amazing place to visit. And that's just St. Augustine. Just St. Augustine. You can go down the coast, go down through New Smyrna, and you don't even have to really get all involved up in Fort Lauderdale and Miami and all this kind of stuff. Cut through the swamp 75, go over to Naples, all sorts of historical stuff down here in the Southwest. And through the little parts of Florida, through the center, it's like walking back in time. There are a couple little cities just inland from me. And I say cities being gratuitous. There's one called Bunnell, Bunnell, where there is still a grocery store there like what you would have gone to in the 1970s. Little IGA. Best meat, by the way. Best meat and produce you'll ever get is that little IGA that has 4 aisles in it. And it's maybe half the size of a CVS. It's an amazing, amazing thing. Little place called Favoretta. All these little areas just inland. I'll kind of zoom in here and see if I can keep the camera where it's supposed to be. Ocala, Northeast, all this kind of stuff. There's just so much to do in Florida that you don't really hear about. I mean, it's everybody's like, oh, Disney, 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 Disney. You could spend a month in Florida, not go anywhere near Disney, and have your days be full of stuff to do. No lie. So anyway, this wasn't meant to be a Chamber of Commerce type of thing, but I think it's a striking contrast. Hemingway's house. I haven't. That's one of the things that's on my bucket list. It's a stark, I don't want to lose my train of thought here. It is a stark contrast to watch the mainstream media, both left and right, have all this consternation and try to convince people that, that the entire country is in a state of collapse and that we're on the brink of disaster. And one side says the only way we can fix it is another 4 years of Biden. And the other side says the only way we can fix it is we need to put Trump back in. When here in Florida, yeah, we have some high prices. Yeah, we've got some inflation issues, but collapse? Nah, not a state of collapse. There's some issues with insurance that are going to need to be hammered out. A lot of us living here in Florida, and I know I have a lot of people in my comment section, we've had to tighten our belts. And I even said this a long time ago too, that, if we have to tighten our belts and we have to scrimp and we have to save and we have to toughen up, I would not rather be surrounded by another different group of people in that type of scenario. You see, Floridians, we are our own apocalypse survival group. I could pick probably any random group of neighbors and have a survival group, an apocalypse survival group, and not have any worry that these people wouldn't have my back and I wouldn't have theirs. And that's just the reality of Florida, because you get made fun of every day, day after day, day after day, week after week, month after month, by all of the other so-called patriot states. I don't think anybody had it on their bingo card that when the real tyranny got dropped down, when the real tyranny came from Washington, D.C., a lot of people thought, oh, it'll be Tennessee that stands up and fights back. It'll be Missouri. It'll be Nope. It was Florida. It was Florida that stood up and fought back. We're the ones. And a lot of people said, no way, not Florida, man. He's to this, he's to that, the other. That's what we would have gotten. And that's the reality. From Florida, this, 7th of February, 2024? Still here. Still fighting against Washington, D.C. Still maintaining our own independence. Not giving a damn about whether Disney stays or whether Disney goes. Disney can stay, but they're going to honor our laws and they're going to respect our government. And they're going to change their ways and clean shit up. Or they can leave. Either way. Only way. Yeah. Yeah, Denise, it's not hard for a state the size of one of our cities to stay open when nobody cares and nobody's traveling there. South Dakota was the only one that stayed open because nobody cared. Nobody was trying to shut you down, Denise. Nobody was trying. We're the third largest state in the union. We had so many private jets flying into Florida from New York when they announced the lockdown up there that we ran out of places to park them. I'll bet you we had more people come here in the first year of lockdown, 2020, 2021, than live in the Dakotas. So, just saying, you can't really, it's night and day. And it's real simple. Everybody's like, oh, did you hear Trump is down to 2 vice presidential picks? Tim Scott or Kristi Noem? It's real simple. You know how we're going to figure this out? I can tell you right now. Trump is going to look at the polls. Trump is going to look at the polls. And if they had wanted to shut down your tiny little state, Denise, they would have. because they shut down. It's the size of a city. Besides, the point being, Trump is going to look at the polls, and if he's doing bad with black people, he's going to pick Tim Scott. If he's doing worse with women, he's going to pick Kristi Noem. He's going to wait, and he's just going to stick his finger in the wind and look at the polls. Because to him, it's irrelevant. I think Donald Trump is actually bothered by people asking him about his VP pick. He's probably like, why do you care who my VP is going to be? They're not going to do anything. I'm going to make sure of it. They're going to be somebody I'm going to relegate to the farthest reaches of the government so that no matter what happens, if it's good, I'm going to get credit for it. And if it's bad, I'm going to blame the deep state. And that's going to be the next 4 years, regardless of who wins. It matters not now to Florida. And that's the greatest blessing of living here. No matter who wins the election, it does not matter to Florida. Because we're going to continue to go our own way. Everybody's heard of MGTOW? A lot of people have heard of MGTOW, MGTOW, men go their own way. This is Florida goes its own way, goes their own way. Floridians go their own way. FGTOW. And, the reason I say what I say, Denise, is that, you never heard Burgum from North Dakota talk about how, well, they didn't shut down our this, that, or the other. Didn't shut. A lot of states, that way out west, northwest, the tiny states, didn't have the attention of the federal government during that time. But Florida, they tried to jump down our with both feet. When DeSantis pushed back, and DeSantis, this is a state of 22 million people, and the most tourism and the most elderly, and we didn't do what they said. They went to the courts, they went to judges, they threatened the military, to bring in military, they threatened it, all sorts. There are people talking about, how can we remove DeSantis and put in some type of a federal enforcer of Fauci's this, that, and the other. There were people really talking about this. And even Biden, and this was the crazy part, even Biden came out, who remembers this, when he says, I am limited to what I can do vis-a-vis Florida by the Constitution. That's why he needed his buddies in the mainstream media to do it. And they sent down plants down here to create lies and try to dig up dirt on his family. And who remembers all the garbage? They dug up pictures of when he was in college, when he was, there's a picture of him when he's drinking some beer with some girls when he's in college or some shit like that. And they did all this crap. And then finally, the Democrat mayor of, was it West Palm or, I'm trying to remember the guy, he finally put his foot down when 2020 came down here in CBS, and they tried to say that he said some negative things that he didn't say about the governor. He came out and gave a press conference of his own and said, look, the mainstream media is lying to you about Governor DeSantis. And he was a Democrat in Florida. People have forgotten about all this. About Florida was public enemy number one during that time. And, they're trying to shut down our beaches, and they were saying we were killing grandma, and they were doing all this kind of crap. They weren't going after Tennessee. They weren't going after Missouri. They weren't going after Texas. They weren't going after all these other states. They were coming after us. So I just want to, make sure everybody's clear on history, and what really transpired. Thank you, Flowers. I have family up north, and they were like, I can't believe you're staying there with DeSantis doing this. And I'm like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? Everybody's fine. Yes, there are some people who have gotten this, and yeah, they're in the hospital. And yeah, there are places where you can go get vaccinated if you want to, and if you don't want to, it's just fine. You can go to the grocery store, and that's fine. And you can go have a beer, and that's fine. You can go to the beach and get some sunshine, and you'll be just fine. Yes, we'll get through this. Yes, there are going to be some challenges. And we were like, what is wrong? Why is everybody losing their mind? Who remember what were they doing? They were taking bulldozers and they were taking sand and dumping it into those skate parks in California and destroying them and knocking down all sorts of different areas that, people could have gone out, got some fresh air, got some enjoyment. The absolute lunacy, the crazy, just because the crazy didn't come here. There were some crazies who were already here during that time. And where are they now? They left. And you don't have to believe me. And this is the best part. You don't have to believe me. Go look at the Florida Democratic Party. They have already come out and clearly stated they have no designs on winning any elections of any kind for the next 10 to 12 years. They have pulled all money out of Florida. They're not even going to try because they know they don't stand a chance. Even in Georgia, there's a huge Democrat movement up there. They're taking the money and they're securing Atlanta so that they can hold Georgia. There's more of a Democrat threat in North Carolina. I would honestly say there's more of a Democrat threat in Tennessee from Nashville and Memphis. Mark my words. That might be the biggest shock. Kentucky's always been a blue state. Mark my words. You might see a huge surprise in this election come out of Tennessee. States that were normally red are all of a sudden, because of the money, they're going to get flipped. Illinois is blue. I'm going to tell you right now, Illinois is going to go blue because of Chicago. Michigan is going to go blue because of Detroit. Wisconsin and Minnesota, they're going to go blue. There's nothing Trump's going to be able to do about it. So those are lost. Michigan, Illinois, Wisconsin, Minnesota are lost. Pennsylvania is a giant maybe, but I wouldn't hold my breath. Arizona, who knows? Truly. They have such a huge margin in California. They could just do the same thing and just migrate votes out of California enough into Arizona to flip it. So, but Florida, no chance. All sorts of places all over this country where people are afraid, what are the Democrats going to do? What are the liberals going to do? What's Biden going to do? What's his machine going to do? Not in Florida. And you might have to ask yourself the question, why? So, I will leave it there. I will let folks go be about their day. I just want to share another live with the governor and let everybody know that if you're done, if you're done with all this northern DC politics crap and you get your finances in order or you can move in with a group of people or you have somebody Florida's still here. It's still constitutional. It's still conservative. And it's going to stay that way for a really long time. Some have asked, Marianne, you have a good governor. We do. Some have asked, what's going to happen in 3 years when Governor DeSantis has to step down? Lieutenant Governor Jeanette Nunez, who stepped into a governor-like role while Governor DeSantis was campaigning. It was a story not a lot of people covered, but I was watching it. She will make an excellent replacement for Governor DeSantis. And yeah, she's Hispanic, but the Hispanics here, God family country. So I will leave it there. God bless. Pray for each other. Pray for me, definitely, please. If you enjoyed Patreon, I could sure use the help. You should see what YouTube is doing to the ad rate on this channel. It's absolutely just catastrophic. $1 a month at Patreon. God bless all of you. Pray for me. I'll pray for you. Lift each other up. Like, share, subscribe. We'll see you guys next time.